wide web, we say welcome just the same. Delighted to be with you today. With me, Dr. Greene is Pastor Staton Adams, and we're going to be continuing this very important discussion on resolving conflicts for the boundary-loving spouse. Pastor Adams, good day and welcome.
Good day, Dr. Greene, and good day, all of our listeners. We are delighted to come to you again on this Thursday morning with another installment in this very critical area that we're now discussing. And we just want you to stay tuned and let somebody else share in this information that you are gathering this morning. So call someone and let them know again that Marriage Encounter is on, and we are continuing where we left off from the last time.
Yes, certainly. Well, let's begin with a word of prayer. Eternal Father and our God, we pray that you will be with us as we share with our friends in radio lands, on the internet, or YouTube platforms. We pray, oh God, that wherever individuals are at this time, that as they listen to the information we present, that they will be able to assimilate it, use it for the benefit of their marriages. We thank you for hearing and answering in Jesus' name. Amen. Last week, we were talking about characteristics of boundary-loving couples, individuals who I want to say comfortable with one another, Pastor Adams. We indicated, and just a little review, we indicated that there are some characteristics of individuals who love boundaries when it comes to solving conflicts. We say that they are open to feedback and correction from others and gain understanding as a result of the confrontation or the feedback. They don't try to defend to make themselves look good. We said that they don't become defensive when their spouse shares the feedback. We also indicated that they take ownership of their own problems, their choices, their feelings, their attitudes, and their behaviors. We said further that they have the ability to see themselves and observe their behavior. And they sometimes can even be critical of themselves. They value the treasures of their spouse. They see that their spouses have contributions to make to their relationships. They see their spouse as, this one is important, they see their spouse as an individual. Well, they're all important, but they see their spouse as an individual, separate from themselves, with separate experiences. And they allow their spouse the freedom to be different from them. That's an important one, Pastor Adams, and maybe we should just talk to that a little bit.
Yes, that the valuing that we spoke on, and I did give the illustration, well, I give from my own experience, and then allowing one spouse to be different from themselves, which is so crucial, yes, because we say that when we come together in marriage, it is two distinct, different individuals. And why is it that we must accept the reality? Because we are just different. The mere fact that we are male versus female, the mere fact that we've come from different backgrounds, different families, different parenting orientation, we just differ. And it is in that difference, and I did illustrate the point that if we look outside in nature, we have to take the reality that all of the flowers are not the same shape, design, color, all of the trees, all of the animals are not the same. So in this differentiation, in this diversity, that we bring, therein lies the beauty of the coming together and the oneness of the relationship. And we keep saying that it is not sameness, but it is oneness. And so the minute we're going to get into relationship, we have to make that paradigm shift in our thinking and our minds that this person is not the same as I am. We have to accept the reality that this person who comes to me in this alliance, in this relationship, is different, and I must give him or her the freedom to be themselves, to maintain their own individuality. It's never called to surrender or individuality. If everything were the same in this life, what would life be with everything being the same? So we must celebrate the differences, accept the differences, celebrate them, and that is the mature approach that we have to take when we come into the alliance. It's not to make the person over into a clone of myself.
Well, I was just about to make the point that we don't marry ourselves, you know. We should not expect our spouses to be exactly like us. Certainly, our spouses don't look like us. Our spouses have their own opinions and their own minds. And what we are speaking to here, as you have articulated so well, is that we have to allow them the freedom, and I want to talk about freedom in a little bit, the freedom to be different from us. Now, when we talk about freedom, we are saying that we do not want to control, we do not want to dictate how our spouses act or behave under certain circumstances. We want them to feel comfortable, to recognize and appreciate the fact that they are adults, or should I say, because we're talking about one individual here, that he or she is an adult, a complete adult with wisdom, understanding, and ability. And that God expects your spouse to function with the wisdom and the intelligence and the ability that he has given him or her. So I should not seek to manage my spouse from the perspective that I'm going to tell my spouse what to do, where to go, how to dress, etc. It's an individual that we have married.
That's that's controlling. That's controlling. And
Exactly.
we should add that's controlling, and controlling that's a different power. That power is satanic. Controlling. We noticed that from the beginning. We noticed that anytime that kind of a behavior is coming through, that is not. We are saying the marriage must reflect and represent Christ. Okay, and Christ, God who made us, is a freedom lover. He understands boundary, and he gives us freedom, and we could go back to the Garden of Eden, because God is a relational God. He made us as relational beings. Remember, he said to them, this whole garden is free for you to touch and to live and to enjoy, but there's one prohibition: don't come near to this tree, neither don't touch it. God also is a relational God. God also has boundaries. God is God. So we notice that the God whom we serve is a boundary lover as well, and he has given us provision. And I was going to say something else when I started to talk, because we live in a global community now, and sometimes we cross cultures in terms of our relationship, in terms of our marriages, and that brings another dimension into it. You see, sometimes it's not just um, both of us are from the same place and the same culture, but sometimes we make a choice in our marital in our spouse, and we cross cultures. What if I get married to somebody from a different culture, maybe from an Asian culture, from an African culture? They come with not only the differences in how they see life, in so many things, but we have to widen now our acceptance, because now we are crossing culture, because people are making those decisions. So I just thought I should add that as well, that if we cross in culture, there are some other things that we have to consider in terms of acceptance of our spouses, and so.
You know, when we were children, I don't know if you had the same experience as I had, Pastor Adams, but when I was a child and my mother asked me to wash the dishes, she would dictate how I turn the dishes in the rack, you know. And you sometimes grow up thinking that this is the way to do it, that there's no other way to do it. Your spouse, you get married and you are accustomed to doing it a certain way, and your spouse does it differently. And invariably you want to say, why did you do that? That's wrong. But it's not wrong, it's different. Differences are important. And when we talk about freedom to be different, we're saying allow your spouse the freedom to be able to do it their way. It should not just be your way. You have to be balanced and open enough. And you're adding a dimension there that is so very important. Now, of course, we do tell people, if you're marrying across cultures, you need to take very careful attention, pay very careful attention to the cultural differences and how you're going to navigate those differences, because those can become very, very problematic. You have to be very disciplined and understand that across cultures, we can have different morals, different values, different ways of doing things. And if we are not careful, they can become a challenge. You know, in one culture, for example, I heard of this situation where, and I'm not even going to specify the cultures because I want to be very general here, that one person married across culture. And in that particular culture where the man was from, the woman was the one that carried the load. The man did not carry the load. If they're walking together, the woman carried the load. So they got married and they came back to the Caribbean and they went to the supermarket. First time they were going to the supermarket, the man, after the cashier put the things in the tray, the man walked away and left the wife to carry the load. Now, she was devastated. What kind of husband do I have? Now, in his culture, that was just the decent, polite, and right thing to do. In her culture, it's the man that does that. And so if we don't understand these differences, it can create a problem. So I'm just saying, especially since Pastor Adams mentioned it, when we are making the decision to marry across cultures, we should not seek to superimpose our cultures on the other individual. We want to allow them the freedom. And after a while, they're living in your cultural context. They're going to adjust. But that adjustment must not be forced. It must be voluntary. We much prefer people make voluntary decisions than have to be coerced into doing things.
Yeah. Yes, and I have seen a couple of those intercultural relationship and the adjustments that had to be made. So I just thought that I should have mentioned that because we're becoming a global village now and people are choosing, you know, all from different areas, nationalities and so for their spouses.
That is so true, Pastor. And sometimes they make the choices without understanding the implications. I guess the marriage counselor or the one doing the premarital preparation. And the truth is, some of these people do these things without even getting marital preparation. And that's when it becomes a challenge.
Right.
Now we also have to understand that generational changes add another dimension, you know. So when we talk about Gen Xers versus Gen Zs, you know, there may be some differences there, and people are more open. People tend to be more accepting of differences, and that is so. But we don't want to take anything for granted.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So the idea is that when we love boundaries, we allow our spouses the freedom to be different from us. Now, does that difference, I just feel like I should ask you this question. I know that there is this political debate in North America right now. And imagine that you are Democrat and your spouse is Republican. Should you force your spouse to? Yeah.
Well,
And
I no, yeah, I was pastoring a couple where a similar, same scenario. One was from a political party and another from another political party. They are both doctors. They live in the same house, and they're members of my church. How do they work out that difference as to whose allegiance, you know, should one force the other? Leave that. As I was hearing the evangelist, I was at the evangelistic series last night, and the evangelist was saying what the politicians say. Should the other one tell the one to leave that one and come into this one? And he used the local vernacular to say, come out of that and come into this. You know, I was amazed. Yeah, but yeah, we do have that. People could have serious debates and conflict over those things, and in another situation, people can have the political differences as spouses and wife, and are so cordial and they don't have an issue. They live in the same space.
So I think this is where we're talking about. This is a good example of allowing your spouse to be different.
Yes,
Because your spouse may have a different perspective than you have, and may truly believe that particular political party is not deserving of their vote or their support, while you may think otherwise. And to give your spouse the freedom to be different is to say, if that's your persuasion, that's your persuasion.
Yes.
And you should be mature enough to be able to even sit down with your spouse and have a discussion, not wanting
Yes.
to persuade them, but just to share your perspectives. And that could be a healthy conversation.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And now that you said that, there's another thing also. What about if somebody comes to the faith and their spouse doesn't believe the same thing like them in terms of religion? That's another thing, So you might have one spouse who's a believer. They are from different religious persuasion, right? And that has happened before one of them um, choose another religious persuasion. What do you do in a situation like that? I have had a situation like that where this guy became Adventist, but his wife Catholic. And
Well,
what happens in that situation?
well, I want to make it even more complicated than that, Pastor, because let's assume that both of them are Seventh-day Adventists, and one of them decides, I no longer want to be a Seventh-day Adventist. I want to be a Roman Catholic. I want to be a Baptist or a Pentecostal. Now, the person is your spouse. The fact that they decide that they no longer want to belong to the same denomination with you does not mean that you have to end the marriage. This is maturity, but this is allowing your spouse the freedom to exercise his or her um, freedom to choose as he or she sees fit. We ought to have that level of maturity. Sometimes I say to people, what if your spouse decides they don't want to believe what you believe any longer? Is that the end of the marriage? It ought not to be.
Right. And in this particular instance, because I pastored that couple before the gentleman actually became a lay pastor. And we used to go to that house and all kind of thing. And his wife was so cordial, so cooperative. She would prepare meals and prepare the meal that he is supposed to eat and doesn't make any fuss about it. I mean, prepare a clean diet with the right things and all of that, respected his newfound belief and his new lifestyle and what he's going to eat now as opposed to what he used to eat back then. This was such a winsome, lovely lady. She was always cordial and always entertaining, and so it was just a beautiful thing. I saw that with my own eyes. So it can work, right? He was not forcing her, you know. But she didn't change in terms of how she would relate to him.
Now let's be sure. We're saying here, Pastor, that when we get married, we are marrying adults, and children should not get married. Marriage is
Definitely not.
yes, marriage is an adult thing. And so when you're getting married to your spouse, you understand that is an adult you're getting married to, an individual who has a mind of his or her own. And that individual, just like you have the power to choose, that individual has the power to choose. Now, you are better off when you are making the decision, you're better off marrying somebody who has the same religious persuasion that you have, who has the same ideas with respect to where we're going in life. We're talking about same value system, etc. We're talking about compatibility here.
Yeah.
But it is important to know that you are not that individual. You're not going to see eye to eye on every level. You may have differences in preferences. Your spouse may like a cold room. You may like a warm room. Your spouse may choose to be a vegetarian and you may choose not to be a vegetarian. And you ought to be able to respect your spouse. And you should not say, if you're not a vegetarian, I'm not going to continue this relationship. No, that is not your prerogative to determine the person's dietary preferences. Those are the kinds of things we're talking about. We're talking about a level of maturity here.
Of maturity comes in. And
Yeah.
if you cannot grow, because we were saying that in the conflict, it's a growing process. We said that at the last, I don't know if it's the last broadcast or the one before. Yeah, when our spouses point out something to us and we see the differences and we see where we need to grow and what level of acceptance we have today, it's a growing process, it's a maturing process. So conflicts are not necessarily seen as bad. So of course, sometimes when we hear the word conflict, but we must see it how these are the advantages that we get when we go through the process. It helps us to grow, and it helps us in the whole experience of maturity, not only as individual, but as the relationship is also maturing at the
Mhm.
same time.
Yeah, maybe we should touch another area quickly, Pastor. The concept now, we just spoke about freedom to be different from one another, but there is the matter of respect the freedom and space that their spouse has. Now, this is a little different from what we've said before.
Mhm.
Freedom and space. You know, there are some individuals who do not want their spouse to have private space, space to be themselves, space to mingle with their friends and associates, etc. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, and that is so very important. And when I'm doing the premarital counseling sessions, I deal with those things from there, because before the person met you, they might have had friends and associates, and
Correct.
maybe from childhood, and all kind of thing, and you have real very good friends during your, what we say, growing up days, probably in your street, in your village, wherever you grew up, in your school that you went to. I have real childhood friends of both sexes, both male and female, that you grew up with. And rough shoulder, and here is it that this new person comes into your life who you're dating and courting, and then you get married. What do you do? Do you cast off all your friends, and thing? No, you maintain your friends. But what I say, that your spouse, either way, should know who your friends are. You should make it a point to introduce your friends. My wife knows my friends, who they are. You know, some of my college mates, strong friends. Both sexes. And so so it's not anything now that you are, there's an awareness now, right? Because these people would have probably, they're not just friends but an associates, but they add some value to your life, to your experience, so you just can't drop them like that. And by extension, I mean that no individual or no family is an island. We need other people. Yeah, we need friends and associates. Yeah, so I have other friends. Some of them are married, some of them are not married. But you have to exercise you have to know the boundaries as you relate to your friends. And
Correct.
yeah, you also have to know the boundaries as you relate to your friends. And so particularly if you have friends who are female, you have to know your boundaries as you relate to them as well, you see, so that you know.
Well, let me just strengthen that point. You said if you're female, if they're female, but depending on, so what we want to talk about, the opposite sex, you ought to know the boundaries with
Yes,
respect to opposite sex.
right.
And it is true. If I have friends before I get married, when I get married, I don't just dump my friends unless they're destructive to my
Yeah,
marriage.
accept, yes, yes, accept.
And if I am mature and if I am of a similar value system to my spouse, then chances are my spouse are going to share my friends are going to share some of the values that I have,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
and that should be in order and okay. You don't want to dictate your spouse's operations so that your spouse feels as though they are your servant and not your spouse, you
Yeah,
know.
and I have seen that thing. Somebody pointed out to me, where one spouse was so, you know, I don't know if disrespectful is the right word, I want to use, um, but she didn't want to allow it was the husband in this case, to continue the relationship with his friends that he had from, you know, and she was blatantly in public disrespect, and that was a very awkward situation. That was a very, very awkward situation. So we can have those kind of things that can cause real problem, the conflict in the relationships, right? But as you rightly said, sometimes we may have to, those friends are friends that we choose and they have the same values, similar values, they have a benefit to us. Notice my word. If the friends are not friends, your friends are supposed to be of benefit to you and your relationship. right?
And you
And that,
also mentioned that your spouse should know who your friends are
yes,
and should be comfortable with that. We're not
yes,
necessarily saying that they have to become your spouse's friend, but
right.
you want, if your friends come over, your spouse should know who your friends
Yeah,
are. So that's
yes,
important. Now we have
complete.
about a minute and a half or two so to go past. So I just want to throw in this last one here very quickly. Boundary lovers see their own need for growth and change. I think this is so very important. As an individual, I must recognize that I don't have it all together, that I'm not perfect. That's another way of putting it. That I need to grow. That there may be areas of weakness in my life that my spouse can point out, and that I can myself look and recognize and say, hey, listen, I'm not satisfied with this. I need to go in this area. I need to change in this area. That is recognizing that I'm not perfect and willing to make adjustments, willing to put in the work to create a positive difference so that I can have a better marriage, a more successful marriage.
Yeah, and the point that we were just making before, because you know we said that maybe about 2 or 3 broadcasts ago that that ability to change and to grow, your spouse may be pointing that out to you, but your friend might be pointing out the very exact same thing, and you're more inclined to listen to your friend. You know, I have a friend of mine. I have some close friends. I have one of them in Texas, and there was an issue, and I called him and so he said exactly. He said, Adams, your wife is correct. You know, so is the case, man. Make the adjustment, do so. You know, your wife is correct because I know that this is an issue, right? And there again, I'm come back to the point of the value of friends, right? Yeah.
That requires a degree of humility to
Yeah.
act,
Yeah, you have to be, and I think the next section that we'll go into, that word humility comes in about in one of the points that we have to make. Yeah, so it is important that
well, our time is just about up, Pastor.
our time is up. Our time is up.
We're going to wrap it up here, but it's an important place to end anyway. To have the wisdom to recognize that, hey, I have faults, I have imperfections,
Yes.
I need to grow, I need to develop is important. That attitude will tell me that I'm not perfect. Well, that's where we're going to stop for today. If you have questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to send us a note, marriageencounter@slcadventist.org. That is marriageencounter@slcadventist.org. That's all the time we have for today. So until next week, same time, may God's richest blessings be yours.